There's something strange going on with the American economy right now, and I want to show you exactly what it is. On one hand, everything looks incredible. The stock market is soaring. Not just stocks, but gold, bonds, GDP. Almost every major economic indicator is pointing up. You hear it everywhere. Record highs, strong growth, trillions of dollars being added in value. It feels like money is everywhere, so naturally you'd assume the job market must be doing just as well, right? That's how it's supposed to work. When the economy is booming, companies hire, people get jobs, and everything moves together. But that's not what's happening. Hiring is slowed. Companies are cutting tens of thousands of jobs. And suddenly, everywhere you look, people are saying the same thing. Nobody can find a job. This is something called the hiring rate. It measures how many people, as a share of the total workforce, get hired every month. And right now, it's way down. The last time it was this low was briefly during the early pandemic, but the last time it stayed this low for a long period was during the worst part of the global financial crisis. That's the level we're at, which means something is seriously off. If you already have a job, you might not notice anything. Things probably feel normal. But if you need a job right now, it feels completely different. It feels empty. It feels dry. It feels like there's nothing out there. And yet somehow the economy is still supposedly strong. So let's actually look at this contradiction. Imagine putting the hiring rate on a chart and then overlaying it with the stock market. One line goes up, the other goes down. That's weird. That's not how a normal economy behaves. So what's going on here? To understand it, you have to experience what the job market actually feels like right now. Imagine you're a new graduate, or maybe you just moved cities, or maybe you got laid off. Whatever the reason, you need a job. So you go online, you open a job platform, you start searching. Let's say you're a writer. You type in writer jobs and hit search. You find a position. It looks decent. Good company, decent pay, posted recently. Then you look closer. Over 100 applicants. You scroll. Another job. Over 100 applicants. Another one. Same thing. And here's the part people don't realize. Most platforms stop counting after 100. So when you see applicants, that could mean 150, 300, maybe even more. So when you apply, you're not competing against a handful of people. You're competing against a massive crowd. Statistically, your chances start looking worse than getting into an elite university. So you adjust. Maybe the salary is too high. That's why it's competitive. You lower your expectations. You apply to lower paying roles. Same result. Hundreds of applicants. So you pivot again. Maybe try a different field. Marketing, operations, anything. Same result. More competition, more silence. Eventually you get desperate. You start looking for anything. Barista, retail, whatever you can get. Then you add one filter: health insurance. Suddenly hundreds of results shrink down to almost nothing. That's the moment it hits you. This isn't just competitive. This is broken. There are very few jobs and way too many people trying to get them, which means every single job listing gets flooded with qualified applicants. You can spend hours every day applying, sending resumes, writing cover letters, and still never hear back. And that's exactly the trap millions of people are stuck in right now. And it's getting worse. So what's causing this? Because this isn't just one problem. It's multiple forces hitting the job market at the same time. And together they're creating something like a perfect storm. Let's start with one of the biggest factors: interest rates. There's this institution called the Federal Reserve, and one of the main things it controls is interest rates. That's basically the cost of borrowing money. Over the past few years, interest rates have been high. That's intentional. They raised rates to slow down spending and control inflation. But there's a side effect. When borrowing money becomes expensive, businesses pull back. If you want to start a company, expand operations, or invest in growth, you need capital. And when that capital is expensive, you become more cautious. You delay expansion. You cut costs. And most importantly, you slow hiring. Instead of hiring 10 people, maybe you hire 5. Instead of hiring 5, maybe you hire none. Now multiply that across the entire economy. That's a massive reduction in job creation. Now add another layer: tariffs. Tariffs are essentially taxes on imports. They were supposed to bring jobs back by encouraging companies to produce inside the country. But in reality, they've made it more expensive to run a business, because most companies rely on imported materials and raw goods, components, machinery. When those become more expensive, companies have to spend more just to operate. That leaves less money for hiring. In some cases, it forces companies to shut down or move operations elsewhere, which means fewer jobs. And the people who would have had those jobs now have to compete for the remaining ones. That increases competition for everyone. Then there are layoffs, not just small ones, but large-scale layoffs, including government jobs. When a major employer cuts hundreds of thousands of roles, those workers don't disappear. They re-enter the job market, and they bring experience with them, which means if you're applying for a job, you're not just competing with people at your level. You're competing with people who may be more experienced, more qualified, and more desperate. That makes it even harder to get hired. Now let's talk about AI, because this is where things get more complicated. Right now, AI isn't massively replacing existing workers across the board, but it is changing hiring decisions. Instead of replacing jobs directly, it's preventing new jobs from being created. A company that might have hired 10 entry-level entry-level workers can now hire 5 and use AI tools to increase productivity. The result is the same amount of work getting done, but with fewer people. So those extra 5 jobs never exist. And those missing jobs are often the ones that new graduates rely on to enter the workforce. That's why entry-level hiring feels especially brutal right now. It's not just that jobs are disappearing, it's that they're never being created in the first place. And there's another layer to this. Investment is shifting. Instead of money going into industries that create lots of jobs, more of it is going into things like automation and data infrastructure. These areas require huge amounts of capital but relatively few workers. So the economy keeps growing, but job creation doesn't keep up. That breaks a fundamental assumption people have always had, that economic growth automatically leads to more jobs, because now that's no longer guaranteed. And when you combine all of this high interest rates, tariffs, layoffs, AI, and shifting investment, you get a system where jobs are being suppressed from multiple directions at once. Fewer jobs are created. More people are competing, and the barrier to getting hired keeps rising. Which brings us to one more question that often comes up. Are immigrants taking jobs? It's a common argument. The idea is that if you remove foreign workers, more jobs will open up for citizens. But when economists studied this, they found something surprising. Removing immigrant workers didn't increase employment for citizens. In many cases, it actually reduced it, because many of these jobs are complementary. Workers in different roles depend on each other. Remove one group and the system breaks. Businesses shrink, and when businesses shrink, they cut jobs across the board, including jobs held by citizens. So instead of solving the problem, it makes it worse. And that brings us back to where we started. The economy looks strong on the surface. The numbers are up, markets are up, growth is happening. But underneath that surface, something is changing. Companies are learning how to grow without hiring as many people. Technology is replacing the need for new workers before those jobs even exist. And policies meant to control inflation are slowing down job creation even further. So when people say the economy is doing great, they're not entirely wrong, but they're not seeing the full picture either. Because for millions of people, especially those trying to enter or re-enter the workforce, it doesn't feel great at all. It feels like the system isn't working. And if these trends continue, this might not just be a temporary phase. It might be a fundamental shift in how the job market works. A shift where growth no longer guarantees opportunity. A shift where competition keeps increasing. And a shift where finding a job becomes harder even in a strong economy. And if that's true, then the real question isn't just where the jobs went. It's whether the system is slowly learning how to grow without needing as many workers as it used to.